Hey everyone, it's Bridget. Today I'm going to explain and summarize the article Using Discrete Trial Training to Identify Specific Learning Impairments in Boys with Fragile X Syndrome. This was written and published by Scott Hall, Kristen Husty, Jennifer Hammond, Melissa Hart, and Alan Reese. It was published online in January 2014. Now the title's kind of big and a little bit scary if you don't understand what exactly everything is, which I didn't at first. So discrete trial training is actually a method of teaching in which adults use one-on-one trial instruction with reinforcers and prompts chosen beforehand with clear repetition to learn a new skill. The main idea there is to learn a new skill. So that it's using discrete trial training to identify specific learning impairments in boys with Fragile X syndrome. I did not know what Fragile X syndrome was at first, but I learned that it's actually the most commonly known inherited form of intellectual disability. The weaknesses include executive functioning, visual memory, perception, mental manipulation of visual and spatial relationships, and overall mathematical reasoning skills appear significantly impaired in students with Fragile X syndrome. They also chose to do boys, which I didn't understand at first, but they said there was more research done on girls. And I also made the connection that we learned in Psychology of the Exceptional Student that it's more prominent in boys from across the board in special ed, that it's a higher percentage of boys that have these disabilities. So how did they exactly do this? First, they got their participants. All participants were between the ages of 10 and 23. They had 10 students that had Fragile X syndrome and 10 students that did not. They all took the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, specifically the math part, and they all had around the same score, control group and not the control group, the Fragile X syndrome students. They also took a pretest on fractions, and they all had to receive below a 33.3% because the new skill that they're going to use in research on is fractions. So the participants had to not know anything about fractions to make it a new skill. So once they had their participants, they were able to split them up into a couple groups. So they had their control group and then they had their Fragile X syndrome students. They took 5 from each group and they worked one-on-one with a behavior analysis to do the discrete trial training. The other 5 from each group were actually put onto a computer to do discrete trial training software. Both groups were doing the same exact thing, one with a behavior analysis, one on a computer. They all received the same amount of prompts or reinforcers. If they got a specific number correct, they were able to remove the reinforcers. If they got one wrong, the reinforcers would come back. All of that was equal, the same number of everything across the line. And then they were specifically teaching the new skill of fractions, so fractions and their correspondence with the pie chart. So if they had a 2/3 here, the student would have to match the 2/3 with the picture of the circle with two pieces of pizza filled in and then the one not to represent 2/3. So they were testing the visual correspondence of fraction and pie chart. So they found out that boys with Fragile X syndrome were significantly slower to learn the fraction to pie chart equivalences, meaning they got more wrong and needed more prompts to learn the new task. Basically, they were slower than the students that did not have it, and that was the main thing, that it took them more reinforcers and more time to lose the reinforcers to learn this new skill that took these other students a lot faster. The authors said that this is clear and understood that they kind of expected the students would be like that, but they didn't expect them to need as many reinforcers as they thought they did. They decided that it is a problem that these students need all of this reinforcers and everything because of the fact that when these students are taking standardized tests or tests in the classroom, they're not going to have the one-on-one, and they're not going to have the verbal prompts, and they're not going to have the reinforcers to be there. And that's what they're saying that they really think they need. For my own classroom, I learned from this research that, one, I did not know what Fragile X syndrome was. Now I do. I also learned the importance of discrete trial training. I think it's an excellent way to teach a new skill. And they found that there was no difference between a one-on-one behavior analysis and this computer software. So if I'm having classroom of 10 students and 2 of them need this discrete trial training to learn this new skill, instead of me separating, like cutting myself in half and doing everything with all of my students, I'm able to just put this one on the computer, work with my other ones. And I thought it was an awesome way that they proved that this computer and the behavior analysis, they have the same results. And that's awesome that technology is able to do that for us today. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.